Good morning. Today we'll go for some practical work in which I'll show you how to use mysql and how to connect mysql and Python. Okay. For that, before we're going for mysql and Python both, let us start with how to use mysql. Okay. Now for that, for how to start mysql, first we'll go for the start menu. As I already told you, if you are already installed mysql, go to the start. Now this is the mysql command line client. Okay, you can use the command line client or this anything you can use. I am using this command line. Now let the mysql to open. Now the mysql window open. Here what happened, it will asking you the password. You have to give the same password whatever you mention in that case. When you install mysql, at that time you have to give a root password, and that is this password. ये वही password है. You have to give that password. So in my case it is admin, so I am giving the admin, then press the enter key. Now see, here we have the mysql window or mysql prompt. Okay, so in this mysql prompt, what you have to do, you have to suppose I want to check some commands. The best command is show databases. Show databases, then semicolon or terminator, press the enter key. When I am pressing the enter key, see how 7 rows in the set. Okay, that means the 7 rows are selected. Here these are the different databases: company, information schema, mysql, performance schema, Sakila, sys and world. These are the databases which are created in this mysql. Suppose we want to create another database. For creating database, the simple you have to use the command create command, that is create database, create database and the database name. Suppose you are creating a database school, terminator, then enter. Now see, query okay, 1 row attached, affected. Now what happened? Now if you are using the same command, show databases, show databases, terminator. Now what happened? Here we have 8 rows, and in this 8 rows the same company, information schema, mysql, performance schema, Sakila and school. Here the new database school is added to your to this mysql. Okay, now suppose we want to create some table in the school database. For that you have to use the database first, because these are the different databases. These are the 8 databases over here. So in this 8 databases you have to create the database in a particular, you have to create a table in a particular database. Suppose I want to create the table in the school database, then what happened? We have to use this database. For that you have to use the use command, use database, or use, you can directly write down use school, the database name, use school, then enter some terminator, then press the enter key. Now see, database changed. That means the default database now has been changed to school database. Now suppose I am writing here for displaying the table, one command is there, show tables. Now what happened? Empty set. That means this database doesn't have any table. Now suppose we are going for any other database, then by using the show table, suppose I am going for world now, use world. Now see, again the same output we have, that is the database change, and after watching the database change I am showing your show tables. Now what happened? Three tables are there in this database. One is your city, country, and the country language. These are the three tables with this data type. Now what happened? If you are going for using that our database, that is school, so use school terminator, then enter. Now what happened? The database has been changed. It's showing database changed and the MySQL prompt appear. Now what happened? We want to create a table. You already know the table creation data syntax of the table creation command, that is create table, then the table name. Suppose I am creating a table student, the table name is student, start the bracket. Now the fields, suppose the first field I am going to do admission number. The data type is integer. The data type is integer. Suppose I am giving the length as 4, comma. The next field, roll number, suppose. Roll number, the data type is again integer. Yeah, we can take character over here. Character, the length is 4, comma. We can now take another field, name. The data type is varchar or variable length character. You have already learned about these data types. The varchar and the length is 20, suppose. Okay, so these are three fields I am taking for the table. Student, then close the bracket, terminator, press the enter key. Now when I am pressing the enter key, what happened? Query OK, and one table has been created. Now see what happened. Suppose I am doing now show table. Show tables. Then what happened? It's showing your table student. Suppose you want to see the detail or you want to display the detail of that table, particular table, whatever table you are created, student table. For that you have to use the command describe, describe student. Describe student. Now whatever, these are the table structure. Student, admission number, type integer, not null or null is yes, that means you can enter without, you can leave this value. Then key, we are not mentioned any key over here. When we are creating table, we have not mentioned whether it is primary key, candidate key or any kind of key. We are not mentioned any kind of key. That's why this key has been 3. So 3 rows are there or 3 attributes are there in this table, that is your student table. So this is how we can use the mysql command. Okay, now let's go for your Python. How can we connect the Python with mysql? So before that, just I'm opening the Python over here. This is ideally Python 3.7. Just wait for a minute. Okay, so when we are using Python for connector, as I told you, you have to install the connector for Python when you are installing the mysql. And if your mysql and your Python both are installed correctly and the connector has also installed correctly, at that time we have to use some commands in case that for connecting the mysql client. Okay, so for connecting the mysql client, I have already created a file. I just show you that file. Open. I have created a file, my comment. Now this is a normal test your cell file, whatever file you have created in Python in the last year. You have created many files or you have created many programs in Python. In the same way you have to open. Here we have 2 or 3 compulsory line. This much of line or this 4 line has been compulsory lines you have to use. Okay, that is the first one is the import. Import is a procedure, or import is a function over here that is used to import or used to include MySQL connector with the Python. So the statement is import mysql dot connector. Okay, then this statement mysql connector, here mydb, the mydb is a user defined variable. You can use any name over here. I am using mydb, or many people use mydb because it is easy to remember. The mydb is a variable that used to store the database details. Okay, in this mysql mydb, we are going to store the details of the mysql whatever we are using in our computer. So that mysql dot connector dot connect, that means first we have imported mysql connector. After that, what happened? In a variable we are storing mysql dot connector. The mysql is the main function, dot connector is the sub function. That connect to what to connect? These are the argument of the function, that is host, user and password. Host, user and password, these are the three argument of the connect function, using which we can connect to a particular database or MySQL itself. So here the first one is the host. Host is the local host over here, because we are using MySQL server, but the machine or the system is not connected to any kind of network, and the MySQL server itself store in this computer, or in your computer the MySQL server has been connected. That's why you have to write down local host here. If you are using the server, MySQL server that is stored in another computer, and you are connected to network, at that time in this case you have to give the IP address of that particular computer. The second argument is a root. The second argument is the root, that is user. As I told you, the default user of MySQL is your root, and in that root the user is the root, MySQL user is the root, and the password. The password, that is nothing than the password whatever you are given when we install the MySQL. If in your MySQL you have created a different user, at the time of installation I told you how to create different user. If I created different user for MySQL, then you can make a username, you can change the root username as any username whatever you are assigned in that case, and the password is for that particular user. You have to give the password, and this line is used to connect your MySQL with Python. Sometimes one more argument is also given over here, that is a database, for which database we are using. Suppose in this case, in our case, we are using a database school. Database is equal to school. So here one more argument I have assigned, that is database is equal to school. So this much thing you need to connect with MySQL and Python. After that you have to obtain the cursor. You have to obtain the cursor. For that you have to use the mydb. Mydb is the variable over here. In the mydb variable we have opened the file here. What file we have opened? MySQL, localhost, root user, and the database is school. So for mydb it is nothing than the database school of the MySQL, or of MySQL का जो database school है, that has been connected with the mydb. mydb.cursor, this is a must function. This should be used. In this case will get the cursor, or will obtain the cursor from the MySQL, because now we are in Python and we are executing the program in MySQL. So for that we have to get the MySQL control या फिर MySQL cursor. For that we have to use mydb.cursor. And as I tell you, we are getting the cursor over here, then we have to store that cursor into a particular variable. For that, suppose I am using another variable CUR, or you can use any variable over here. But many people using CUR because it is easy to remember. CUR stands for cursor, MyDB stands for my database. Okay. So after that the cursor has been obtained, then each and every command will be executed through cursor.execute. Cursor.execute, and within a pair of bracket and your pair of curly braces, bracket and a pair of double quote, you have to write down whatever be the command of MySQL. Now this is how we can connect MySQL and your Python. I told you how to use the MySQL using the MySQL prompt, and already I will tell you, I told you how to connect the MySQL with your this Python. Okay, so this much for today. Try to do MySQL, or try to do create some database and table in MySQL first. After that, in the next session we'll learn how to create database, how to create table through Python using MySQL. Thank you and have a nice day.